Well, good day, everybody. Welcome to the bridge. We are working today on season 5, episode 9, and we have today with us returning Colleen Kochannek. Maybe I'm
Kohanic. It's close enough. Yeah. I always say the C isn't, pretend the C isn't there. It's Polish. Polish name.
all right. Well, I guess I don't have a very good accent, but anyway, welcome, Colleen. We're glad to have you here.
Thank you.
Colleen's going to share a couple of stories, journeys with us today about her grief process with two different individuals. But before that, we're going to have Sandy tell us our quote for the day. Sandy, what's our quote?
Our quote is by Pablo Cascola, and the quote is, "I feel the capacity to care is what gives life its deepest significance." So caring is a wonderful thing.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, Colleen, welcome again. And I'm going to give you the floor or the air, I guess, whatever I'm giving you. And go ahead and start us off with one of your grief journeys.
Yeah. So I'm Colleen. I'm 58 now, and I was widowed 7 years ago. My husband and I had been together 29 years, married 20 of those, but so more than half my life. So it has been, I always like to point out it's been 7 years now. So I have a little, I kind of say I have a little distance on it, but, grief is a never ending thing. But I feel like, when I talk to people who are maybe in a much fresher or newer experience, it's obviously very different, but I do have a little distance on it now, and maybe a little hindsight maybe is the better word to think about it. So yeah, it has definitely been a huge process. It has been a huge process that is never ending. Grief is never gone. I always feel like, it'll be there forever. You kind of learn to bring it alongside you, and it will sneak up on you in the most random of moments, for sure. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So, you were also a caregiver for your husband.
Yes.
Yes. Do you think that awakened you to some of the stages of grief, or were they totally different?
Yeah, I mean, so my husband came home one day. I'll never forget it. Like, he came home and he had just been to his cardiologist because he had blood pressure issues, and he said that he was in AFib, which we didn't know what that meant or anything. And he got very sick very quickly. I mean, like within a couple weeks, suddenly I found myself caregiving and kind of thrust into that life of caregiving, which nobody's prepared for, and nobody prepares you for, because suddenly you become nurse, medical team, transportation, cook. Like my life really stopped for a year, like completely. And probably the last 6 months, he was very, very sick, to the point where I couldn't even really leave him for like a few minutes, or, getting him in and out of cars and things like that. And when you're in it, you don't know you're in it.
Yeah.
You just don't know you're in it. You just start doing and figuring out, and you're just in it. You don't see it till to me, I didn't see it till afterwards, like looking back what that experience was. Yeah.
So, denial.
Yes.
Talk to me about denial and you and maybe your husband.
Yeah, it was interesting. He was in absolute denial the whole time he was sick, and he never believed he was dying until really the last, few days, literally. The rest of us could see he was dying. Like, it was clear as day. We had, I always tell the story, our primary care physician was a neighbor and a friend, but we were in his office one day, and my husband said to him, like, "Man, like, when am I going to start getting better?" And the doctor said, he literally said, "Dude, all we're doing is keeping you alive.
Wow.
You're not coming out of this." And that still didn't register with him at all. And the doctor's like, you need to bring your children over to see you. They lived abroad, and he was in absolute denial, which was kind of, I don't know, maybe it's a testament of human nature, but it was clear he was dying. Like, he was so sick and diseased and debilitated, and he was in absolute denial. We were all like, yeah. It became a waiting game, which is horrible. Like, I'm waiting for this person to die. Like, it's today the day. It's today the day. It's today the day.
Well, and if he just willing to have the conversation with you, Colleen, it had to have you feeling very lonely or isolated because you were dealing with things that he wouldn't go there with you, probably.
Yeah, he just didn't accept or see the gravity of the situation, which was, when somebody gets sick like that, there's more and more medical care and, medicines and all the things involved. And he just never saw the gravity of the situation. He did say to me one day, he's like, this is inhumane what you have to do with me. And I said, yeah, it really is. But then it was like, next, not in a malicious way, but it was like, he just was in denial that he was not going to get better. It just didn't cross his mind.
It almost sounds like it was a protective device to save him from going through the phases. And, it's interesting. What just dawned on me, and maybe I'm not very bright since it just dawned on me, but the stages of grief, we talk about the person who has lost the loved one. But I'm thinking that the person going through it must go through these stages.
Oh, absolutely. Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, and I think, Colleen, what you're talking about is going into autopilot mode. I've just got to get this done.
Yeah.
We talked earlier about the fact of when you're in the midst of it, being able to break it down into chunks of time, because if you look at the whole picture, it can just be overwhelming and feel like you're drinking out of a fire hydrant. And if you can just do one day at a time, sometimes it breaks it down to even an hour at a time.
Yeah. I mean, it got to the point, I couldn't leave him. Like, it was, I could not leave him physically because he would fall or, and I was terrified of what would happen. So I kind of got to a point almost like, I got to go to the grocery store and get food. Like, so I put him in a chair and be like, hope he doesn't fall. Like, when I'm gone, like, rush home and hoping, and then you feel guilty and horrible. And so it's like this overwhelm that you don't feel like at the time. It's like it's a very strange sensation. And this constant, you're terrified that something's going to happen on your watch.
Right.
Something's going to happen on your watch, and what are you going to do? And then you get to this point where you've done it so many times. Like, he wound up in the hospital so many times. It's, I'd call the paramedics, he'd fall, they'd show up. I'm like, here's his list of medications. And like, it was just like giving him a grocery list, because you do it so many times and then you feel like guilty about that. Like, that, this is like such a bizarre, surreal kind of circumstance that,
So, how many years were you caregiver?
I was a caregiver for a year for him.
Okay.
And probably 6 to 7 months of those, like, critically, he was, had to get to dialysis every day, and, doctor's appointments.
And so during that time of intensity, talk to me how time felt to you. Did it feel slow or fast because of the routine, or did it go back and forth?
I would say I don't think I had a concept of time at the time. Looking back, I think about like the last 3 months. He was so sick, he couldn't get in bed. Like, he couldn't, because of his condition. So he was sleeping like in this recliner chair. I slept on the living room sofa for 3 months and never slept probably more than 30 minutes at a time, because you're caring for them. And that, it was a long time. Looking back, it was a long time. At the time, you don't, you just don't, you don't conceptualize it or realize it.
Mm-hmm. Well, sometimes you almost can't afford to look at that because your courage would dissipate. So sometimes you can't allow yourself to go there.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And the ambiguity of not knowing what's next, it's really an emotional, I mean, you probably swallowed it a lot, but it's an emotional state to never know, not certain about anything.
Yeah. And it's very, you see this person suffering, like, and there's not a lot you can do
Right.
for them. I mean, they try to make them comfortable. And I do remember a funny story. He was very like averse to painkillers and everything. The doctor's like, it's going to help you be comfortable. And he's like, what if I get addicted? And he's like, dude, if you survive, we'll get you off them. Like, it's the least of your worries.
Right. Right.
But he was resistant to that, and I'm like, at least you'd be more comfortable. But it's rough, and you want to give them, obviously, this is an adult, like autonomy and everything. But after a while, you have to just start making decisions for them, like you got to do this, and you got to do this, and we've got to do this, and
Well, and I think, and I may be wrong, but I think a guy's ego oftentimes prevents them from being able to go in certain directions too. I think more so sometimes for a guy than a gal. I may be wrong. I don't mean to sound sexist, but I think that the ego is a tough thing to get over and admit I'm not who I was.
Yeah. And he had a very hard time because he was very diseased and sick. And, when I wanted to bring his children to visit, and he said, absolutely not. And, they were devastated because they were like, why does daddy not want to see us? And I said, no, he doesn't want you to see him that way. He doesn't want you to see him that way. He was emaciated. It was just, it was brutal to see. But he had a hard time. Like he knew he looked that way, but I think his ego was,
Well, yeah. And it's almost part of the human spirit to protect yourself from, there's shame involved in how you look. And, there's a whole bunch of emotions there that anger, I can hang on to this. That's the only thing I can hang on to. So,
Well, yeah, and you're used to being the strong protector oftentimes when it's when you're a guy. You've protected your family, and so to have them see you as not the protector anymore is really difficult.
Yeah. And seeing it, like if you're not in the medical, I mean, obviously medical professionals see dying, sick people all the time. When you see somebody deteriorate before your eyes, I was like, how is this even possible? Like it was just, crazy. It was like really brutal to see, to even witness it.
So, are there any pieces of wisdom or advice that you have for people that not only are dealing with them becoming a caregiver, but with kind of the medical system? Any pointers you can say, look for this or do this?
You become an advocate real fast. You've got to be your person's advocate. I kept a notebook. I had this little like spiral notebook, and I realized very quickly, medical people don't talk to each other. And, my father had been a physician. He was a gastroenterologist, and he always called himself the bus driver. Like he was the one that would talk to everybody's doctors. They don't do that anymore.
Right.
They have hospitalists now and all these separate specialties. And I remember sitting with he had a hematology oncologist, he had a cardiologist, all these doctors. And this oncologist said to me, who the heck put him on this heart medication? Like, do they know he has this myelodysplasia? And I'm like, yeah, the cardiologist knows it. He's like, why did he put him on it? I'm like, why are you asking me these questions? I am not a medical doctor. I don't know why. And he's like, well, this could kill him. This could make him bleed. And I'm like, I don't know what to tell you. But it's kind of scary. And then you get really conflicting because people seem very siloed now in medicine. So the cardiologist only wants to deal with the heart, and this guy only wants to deal with the blood, and this guy only wants to deal with the kidneys. And there's not a lot of coordination now.
Right.
And, and then you get in this thing where, well, we're going to fix the kidneys and kill the heart, or save the heart and kill the kidneys. And I'm like, you can't be asking me these questions. I'm not trained in this.
Right.
I'm not trained. Yeah.
Right. So when you advocated and maybe gave doctors information that they should have had or they should have seen in the chart. Were they resistant to hear you, or were they?
I think when you come in as an advocate, why are we doing this? What is this for? What is this going to do? How is it going to interact with the other things going on? Like, you learn to ask those questions quickly. The problem is you don't always get the answers you want, because sometimes there just aren't good answers.
Yeah.
He's really sick, and we're choosing now between saving the heart and killing the kidneys. Sometimes there's no good answers. So you just have to be very, I became, the squeaky wheel gets the oil. And I think you have to become that.
Yeah, that's really good advice. That's good
Yeah.
advice. So how about for you as a caregiver? What, if I was your neighbor, what could I have done or asked you to help?
It was hard. I had neighbors offering all the time. He didn't want people to see him, so he was very resistant to anybody coming in the house. Can you go to the grocery store? Can you do things like that? Other than that, there is not a lot to be done except caring for the person, and then that becomes a very intimate, personal thing that they don't want. Right. Maybe a medical professional, but we had a nurse that came in weekly because they had to do a special sterile change that they're like, you're not allowed to do that. I'm like, wait a minute, I'm allowed to change the pump and do all this, but I can't rub some alcohol on this. Anyhow, it was kind of funny, but they'd send a nurse for that every week. But I think it's hard. He didn't want visitors. He didn't want visitors. He didn't want company. He didn't want the help. So.
Right.
Yeah, but did you get any help, just processing help, someone to talk to, someone to call?
No, not at the time. After the fact, it's all in hindsight. When you're in it, you're just in it. And, when you're with healthcare providers, of course, it's all about the sick person. They're not asking you, how you're doing, or that's not their concern. So it's a lot. And I think it's often put on women to be the caregivers, even of husbands, families, and things like that. It's just kind of expected, an expected role, it's a lot.
Yeah, it's a lot.
Yeah.
And I don't know, when you're in that intensity of caring for somebody, if you would even be in the right mind to process with anybody. You know what I mean? You're so
busy. I didn't know I was in it. You're just in it. You're in it, and you start doing it, and you figure it out, and you make it work, and you're just in it.
Right. Well, we had talked earlier about the fact that if you don't have a medical background, or if that kind of thing, like my family, it has a lot of medical background. My husband's a nurse, and my daughter, one of our daughters is an RN, another one's a nurse practitioner, another one's a PA, and that is their job. They loved that kind of thing. But I went into education for a reason. That was not something that was part of my soul or desire to do in my lifetime. So, Colleen, like you're talking about, all of a sudden you are in a position where you're doing stuff that just wasn't part of your nature. No,
he wound up on this heart pump that was terrifying. They showed me how to use it in the hospital and hook it up to this port. And they're like, it's got to be changed every 24 hours. You cannot be late. He will die. And I'd be waiting for that alarm. And then you have to wait for it in the mail, and they'd send it back up. And if the battery ever dies, this is what you do. And I'm like, I have a business degree. I don't
stress level. I mean, stress level. When you're saying you don't do it on the right time frame, you're going to end up. Yeah. Boy, that was a tough one.
Yeah. In the middle of continuous stress, and it's high, and then it could go way high, and then it's really something.
Yeah, it's constant,
kind of. So with your perspective of 7 years now, are things different than they were the first or second year after you lost him?
Oh yeah. I mean, if I'm looking back on the progression of my grief, I've often talked about, because people ask me all the time, new widows, what should I expect? I'm like, I think everybody's very different, very different. For me, the first year I was fine. I was fine. I was like, oh, I'm fine. Like getting back to, this and that. And you get really busy with the business of death also. And my late husband was from Germany. So that was navigating German stuff, which I still navigate. I mean, that was crazy. So you're kind of busy with the business of death. You also have what I call the casserole period, where everybody gathers around and brings you casseroles and they're all there. And then that stops, rightfully so. I mean, people's lives go on. And then you're kind of left to deal with it. Year 2 was like, oh, shoot, this is real. This is real. He's really gone. And then for me, year 2 was probably the hardest emotionally. And then year 3 was like, okay, you've got to start doing, you got to move forward. Like, this is not, it's not coming back. Like,
well, initially, when you see somebody suffering and hurting and that kind of thing, you just want them to go ahead and die. And not to be mean, but you hate to see them suffer and hurt. And so that first year, it's like letting that go. And I can see how that would be a different situation. And then there's the guilt of, feeling that way, but also then realizing and unpacking that they were not having quality life at that point.
No. And it is a tremendous relief when they finally do die, because when somebody's very sick like that, like I just remember every day, like, is today the day? Is today the day? Is today the day? And you don't know. And you just kind of see the decline and you see the decline. And in the beginning, like when I was caregiving, everything was an emergency. Everything was an emergency. He's fine. And then after a while, you get also very used to it. Mm-hmm. Like, I remember like calling the paramedics again, and they'd show up and I'd be like, oh, here's his medicine. It was like, I knew the drill kind of thing, which is awful too, because you get used to it also, in a sense. That's, yeah. And just, figuring things out, like when somebody is sick, we talked a little bit earlier about this before we started recording. Nobody teaches you how to do these things. Like, we had 2 steps from our house, like down into our garage, and a neighbor came and built a handrail so I could get him down the stairs, like hanging on to him for dear life, because he had no strength. And then I used an office chair on wheels to get him from the bottom of the stairs to the car. Like, it was almost like a clown show, but I'm like, it worked. It worked. Like,
how you have
know what to do. Yeah.
You just don't know. And you kind of have to figure it out yourself. It's not like there's a list or even a person to talk to about it. No. So if you were to advise somebody who's just coming out of the caregiving, the death has occurred, what would you tell them?
Give it time. Give it time. I don't think there's any rushing through, or I don't think there's any rushing through the process, and everybody's obviously coming at it from a very different experience, and there's no rushing it, and it's going to sneak up on you in the oddest moments of time. And 7 years on, it's never gone. Oh. It's better. I mean, I can pretty much anticipate. I remember I felt so guilty last year, because I woke up and I get my Google Calendar alerts and it said anniversary. I'm like, oh, whose anniversary is that? And I was like, oh,
mine.
It was mine. Yeah. But it was the first year that I hadn't like anticipated it, like dreading it. And I'm like, okay, I guess that's progress too. But then you're like the guilt factor, like, it's time. It's time. And I don't think there's no rushing it.
Probably
you're
no
not
end.
Going to rush it.
I can't rush it. No end. Tell me what you learned about yourself in that process.
I mean, you learn, that whole saying, you never know how strong you are until you have no other choice.
Yeah.
Oh, you get very strong. And then you get to this point like, okay, God, we know I'm really strong. Like, can we stop? Can we stop with the lessons I think I've shown? And you're really strong. I think I've learned probably one of the biggest things, life is complicated. My marriage was complicated. It was not all, unicorns and puppies. I was very honored to take care of him in the end. I think the biggest lesson I've had since he's gone is like how much my identity was tied to him and the relationship. I mean, more than half my life, my whole adult life with him, and realizing how much I didn't really know myself and kind of coming out of it. That's been, my process is who am I now? Who do I want to be now? I did a video last week on TikTok that got it blew up. And the video was, I'm 58, I'm widowed, and I'll never marry again. And people have a lot of opinions on that.
Right.
But it was really like, this is the first time I feel like I'm living my first life just as an individual. Because I've never, you're born, you're in your family, you go to school. After college was probably like my first big independent time. I had the apartment, the big girl apartment, a block from my parents, so I wasn't, really out on my own. And then I met my husband, and I had never really just lived on my own and done my own thing. And that's been my process now, that I'm embracing. I'm like, I'm going to go see what am I about now without another person.
Well, so that brings up another question, because I don't know if that's something we can remedy for girls, as they, move from college into their 20s and get married. And, looking back, is there something you could have done differently?
Hindsight is crystal clear, right? I mean, you come into life. I mean, I came into my marriage with a lot of unhealed trauma that, really impacts how you navigate everything. I see it crystal clear now. I mean, after the hindsight's 2020, I do love seeing a lot of younger people waiting to get married, waiting to have babies. Like, there's the conversations happening around that. But, everyone's like, do you regret? I'm like, no, you
Right.
are who you are at any given time. Right. And
Right. Well, those cultural norms are so embedded, it's hard to break through them. And of course, we attract the person we attract because of our family stuff, and that's pretty unconscious until we get probably into at least our 40s.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
That's been a big one. That was something I worked with on a lot, and because I've had a lot of therapy. So I don't joke, but I joke. I married my mother, and my mother was incredibly narcissistic, diagnosed as such. He had, narcissistic tendencies. I wouldn't say that, but I'm like, why would I do that? And the therapist is like, you marry what is familiar.
Right.
You know how to navigate it. It's familiar. But people will say like, well, why didn't you leave? I'm like, it wasn't all bad. Like, it was complicated. It was complicated. But I've also been very conscientious too, not to, saint him after death. People often tend to be, suddenly they become like these incredible, wonderful people. And I'm like, no, it was complicated.
It was who he was. You mentioned something earlier about having a couple of stepdaughters. So are they, do you connect with them now? And is there some kind of support there?
Yeah. So my husband and I did not have children together. I never wanted children. So it was really wonderful having stepdaughters. But they lived, my husband, he was from Germany. He had lived in Africa for many years as an expat with his company, moved to the States where I met him. So his daughters live in South Africa. So we are close. I think what's interesting is everybody goes through grief very differently. Like his youngest daughter, idolized her father. So she's had a very hard time, obviously losing him. And the older daughter, a different relationship, still loved him and all. Everybody has a different relationship with the person, and everybody goes through their grief alone. I say they go through their grief alone and very differently. Like you just can't understand, and losing a mother is different than losing a husband, than losing a father. And yeah.
And I love your blanket statement about a lot of it is that it's complicated. because that covers it all. I mean, the good, the bad, and the ugly,
Yeah.
So I like that. That's a good term.
It is complicated. Yeah. Yeah.
Well, let's move on to your sister. Little different process of grieving and emotions. So tell us about her.
Yeah. So my sister died 3 years ago of colon cancer. She was 4 years older than me. I don't think I'll ever get over that one. Like, it's a very different grief. Right. Somebody said, your siblings, they have known you the longest. And I always say, and they know. Mm-hmm. They know all the secrets, all the, they know where you come from. They, the inside jokes, the inside stories. There is just no replicating that ever in your life with the relationship. So your siblings are, and she's my only sibling. So she was my only sibling.
Yeah.
You said that she was kind of your protector in your growing up years.
She was my protector. And one of the things, I've really had a hard time losing my sister. So we had a very tumultuous childhood, I called it the shit show. It was the shit show of childhood. And she was the older one who was the protector. And she had many health problems in her life. She had asthma. She developed a benign brain tumor in her 30s that they said had been probably there since she was a toddler, and it just got bad enough to impact her. So she had to have a brain tumor removed. And then she got this colon cancer, which there's no family history until the oncologist said, well, you just became the family history. So, now it's in the family. But she was older and she was the protector. And I have struggled a lot with, I think, her in that role. I mean, I think of her like when she's 6 years old, having to protect her little sister from, unthinkable things, what that does to a child. And she was that protector. And, there's that book now called The Body Keeps Score by Besser von der Kolk, which is incredible. I think he's at MIT, talks about how stress, impacts the body and we internalize it, which is where a lot of chronic health issues come from, and disease and things like that. And I'm like, she got all of it and I got none. I've been healthy as a horse my whole life. And there's guilt around that. Like, she was my protector.
Well, you and I talked earlier about the fact that early childhood education was my background, was my career. And I went to a training one summer it was called ACEs, and that is stood for adverse child experiences, and how it affects these little kids that we work with. And there was 10 questions, and you said something that was interesting. There was 10 questions, and there was a score that you came out of it with.
I got a 9 out of 10.
Yeah. And I was doing a training. My mom and I had some challenges in our relationship, and I was doing this training with my staff, and I had gone through and done this worksheet, and all of a sudden it dawned on me while I'm sitting there teaching, my mom had 9 out of 10 too. And no wonder she struggled throughout her life. Oh my goodness. And she had health issues. She passed away when she was 58.
Yeah.
Which
I really believe trauma impacts our health deeply. And so I mean, that the ACEs, we had that. I joked with the therapist. I'm like, I'm always the perfectionist, like try to get 10 out of 10. And she's like, you don't want a perfect score.
No.
But the only one I missed was I had no close relative that had been incarcerated, although he should have been. But that's probably a whole other story. But I mean, I joke about it now.
Worse.
The stories are horrific, but but she was the protector, and because she was older, she remembered a lot of that really early trauma much more than me. I feel very fortunate. Later we got very, very close the last several years, and she really filled in a lot of just absolute blank spots for me. That I just didn't remember, you just don't remember.
Sure.
But I see that it really impacted her health a lot.
She absorbed it all. Yeah, she absorbed it.
Yeah.
And so you'll never get over grieving for your sister.
Mm-hmm.
And were the stages different because you weren't her direct caregiver, but it was a long time from that first, you know, appearance of asthma to her colon cancer. What was the process?
Yeah.
Or
Yeah.
is
So
the
she
process?
was really sick for 5 years. She had cancer for 5 years. In the beginning, it was, I want to say denial, but we were like, oh, it's like colon cancer. Like if you're going to have a cancer, like that's a better one to have because they can fix it. But she was diagnosed she was originally diagnosed at stage 2. Like within a week, they're like, oh no, this is stage 4, which we didn't really realize the,
Implication.
severity of that.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's with her, it was the first 2 years, everything was fine, fine, fine. Then you start to see, oh, this is not going well. And you start getting the dominoes, where anybody with like severe illness, you start chasing the next thing. We're going to break this to fix this and then fix this to break, it's just like this dominoes fall.
Right.
So I would say that was hard. And I would say her illness brought up a lot of anger towards my mother.
Right.
I would say a lot of anger towards my mother because my mother would not come see her, or she wouldn't come see her. She wouldn't come see her when she was dying. She didn't go see her when she was sick. There was a lot of anger there that just brought up a lot of that. And my sister had a lot of anger towards my mother, which I had never seen her express before. So I was kind of glad she was able to express it when she got it.
Right.
But yeah, that hers is the acceptance of hers. I don't know. I knew it was kind of like my husband, like we could all see she was dying. Like you can just see it. It's like they're so sick. She didn't see it. She never thought she was dying. She just kept wanting to do more and more and more and more and more until the very end. And the doctors are like,
That's it.
Yeah.
that's it. There's nothing else to do. And with cancer, chemo, it's poison. It's harsh. It's brutal. Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah.
So, did you learn anything more about yourself other than being strong with your sister's death?
I think, with both of, my husband dying and my sister dying, I think the lesson for me, I've been able to internalize this. I don't want to say live every day if it's your last. I did see a comedian one time do this whole thing like, oh, we should not all live as if today is our last because there'll be chaos in the world. Like everybody's going to be doing crazy stuff. But you do kind of internalize that, like, this is it. Nothing's permanent at all. And life goes on after you are gone, which is kind of a harsh realization. A very few people will grieve you for the rest of their lives. Everybody else just kind of goes on with life. So the lesson is live now, like, be more fearless, be more, all the things we hear about all the time. I think when you experience it, you can start to live more of that for sure.
Right. Well, and you mentioned that some people, somebody that 6 years later still is very impacted. And I think being healthy means that, yes, you always still miss that person, but you don't want to be stuck there for the rest of your life, because therefore you don't live your best life.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think for me, everybody's experience is different. Of course, losing my sister and then obviously losing my husband, losing my sister, it opened a whole can of worms for me, which like therapists are like, these are catalytic events that open the can of worms. So I was able to, I went and got a lot of really hardcore, great therapy, did, the rabbit hole of the videos and the books and the therapy. And that was incredibly helpful. And I'm very much aware. I had a therapist, this is kind of unrelated, but a therapist, we were talking about all the trauma and loss and everything. And she's like, if everybody who's ever harmed you or everything that's ever been done wrong to you, like was fixed or they begged forgiveness, what does it change? I said, ooh, nothing.
Yeah, right.
And she was like, you've got to accept, she called it like radical self-responsibility. You've got to accept at any given moment you are where you are. And that was kind of life-changing. It wasn't easy.
No,
like when you start looking at yourself, you're like,
You have to be accountable. You have to be accountable for yourself because you can't control anybody else.
Yeah. Yeah. So when people get stuck in that, I mean, I think we were talking about, I had this neighbor friend one time that like we all started avoiding her because like 6 or 7 years after her husband had died, you would see her and she'd be like, "Oh, Mom." And I was
Right.
like it became her persona almost, that it was hard to be around. And like you don't want to be uncompassionate, but it's also like at some point you do have to move forward in your life. You do have to move forward.
Yeah, the reality sets in, that's for sure. That's for sure.
Yeah.
So anything that you want to tell us that you haven't told us?
Oh gosh. Other than it's complicated, and I think we need to give ourselves a lot more grace around that. And speaking out about it, speaking up about it is very helpful. I know that's very hard as well. I think we mentioned earlier, I'm in this position now. I have no family. I'm like flying solo. I have friends, but I don't have any family dynamics. I don't have to see anybody at the barbecue on Sunday. So I am able to, speak and process things very freely around the grief and the trauma. But, here we're talking about grief. I'm able to talk about that much more freely without that. And that has been incredibly helpful. So if there's a way to seek help, or even if, and I understand, therapy is expensive and not everybody can access it, go down the rabbit hole. Go down the rabbit hole of the videos, the YouTubes, the books. Do whatever you have to start learning about where you are.
Right.
Because it's complicated. There is light at the end of the tunnel. I mean, I definitely see, 7 years out now from my husband. I'm building a new life. My life looks very different than I ever imagined it to be. But it's pretty good. It's pretty good.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's pretty good.
Awesome. Well, as we wrap up our session with your 2 types of grief, well, maybe not types, but 2 processes, what's one takeaway from our conversation?
For me, give yourself time. Give yourself time, and don't let anybody tell you how to do it.
Right.
Don't let anybody tell you how to grieve, or it's going to look very different for everybody. I even remember like after my husband died, I was able to get rid of his clothes like very fast. Like, I mean, it wasn't like the next day, but quickly I went through his things. I kept his glasses and his hairbrush. For some reason, I still have them. That seemed like the things that reminded me of him. But other people were like, well, how could you do that so fast? I'm like, I don't know. I did it. I was fine. Other people hang on to things and they're like, I should get rid of things. I'm like, do it in your own time. Don't do it your way.
Right.
That's good. That's good. Sandy, what's your takeaway?
We'll let you know what you need to do. My takeaway, I would say, kind of onto what Colleen said, is let your gut kind of be your guide, because there's going to be a time. I have a girlfriend whose husband suddenly died from an illness, just a matter of a week, and he had always been this strong guy and whatever. And she has a sister who is a grief counselor, and she had to make a lot of decisions and stuff, and it was just really hard for her to do it. And her family wanted her to come on and let's do this, let's get this figured out. And her sister said, pause and take a moment and let your gut tell you, because you'll know when the time is right for you to make this choice. And I think that was very wise on her part. Help to give her that grace that you were talking about earlier, of letting yourself process and not try to fit it in with anybody else, because that's not, you are only responsible for what you're going through yourself.
Right. That's good.
Share that with your family and say, hey, this is what I need right now. I'm not ready to do that yet. Give me the chance to be there, get there.
Yeah. I think my takeaway is the word that you use, complicated. It's complicated. That puts a umbrella over all of it, whether I'm feeling mad, sad, glad, and it's my timeline. So life and death is complicated.
Yeah.
Yeah, good. Colleen, thank you so much for coming on with us. For those of you who are listening, you keep hearing, well, we said this, I think I said that. Well, this is the second time we recorded that because I pushed the wrong button and we did a whole episode and it's in the ether now. It's not on the screen. So anyway, hang on there, Colleen, and we'll talk on the other side. Thanks for everybody joining us, and take care. Bye-bye.